Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye is at the Brown County Library interviewing candidates in the 2014 elections. We're interviewing Mr. Jeff McCabe of Kaukauna. He's a Democrat running in Assembly District 5. Jeff, welcome to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you for having me.
Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Jeff, from going to your website, it looks to me like your priorities are restoring funding to public schools. You think the state should have taken the federal offer of for health care, MA, and low-interest student loans. Which of those issues do you want to start out talking about, sir?
Well, public education is really dear to me.
Let's start there. Okay.
I was on the Kaukauna School Board for 15 years, so.
Okay. If you're elected to the Assembly and you're voting, public education is known as one of the biggest items in the next state budget.
Correct.
What are going to be your priorities, sir?
Well, I think we need to look at getting back to the level of funding that we've had previously. We need to realize that by funding education, which I think is one of the state's major responsibilities, is educating our children. We need to see that as an investment in our future. Those children are going to be making our decisions, so we need to see education as an investment. So we need to get at least back to the levels we were before. We also need to look at how we can change education. We're still doing it the same way we've done many years, and we need to be exploring how education needs to move forward. And I would want to see grants and programs that would look at that situation.
One of the biggest issues in the debate is the future of school choice and vouchers. What are your feelings on those programs, sir?
I'm not in favor of the voucher program. I think that takes public dollars away from public education and puts it in to private education where it has no controls or overseeing. I think public dollars are meant for public use, and that is public education.
Would you wipe it out entirely? Would you phase it back? Would you keep it in the city of Milwaukee, which has had it for more than 25 years, sir?
I would phase it out. I don't think you can take the kids that are already in the program and just yank the funding out from under them. After all, one of the things about education is that it is for the children. We need to take that into consideration, their well-being. So I would not just yank it out, but I would phase it out. Okay. Like you said, it's been there for 25 years and we have not seen any real positive results from it. So why keep funding something that's not giving us the results? I'd rather see us look at different ways of providing education.
Over the summer, Governor Walker asked that the Senate and the Assembly join him in withdrawing Wisconsin from the Common Core standards. As a former school board member, your position?
I think we need to keep the Common Core standards. I mean, more than 45 states have signed on to the Common Core standards. At the time when we were looking at adopting the Common Core standards, I actually served, I was on the school board in Kaukauna, and as part of that, I was appointed as the Wisconsin School Board Association's representative to the DPI's Professional Standards Committee. So that's where I first learned about Common Core, and when that was brought to us, it was explained as this was set up by the Governor's Conference. And what they wanted to do was assure that we have such a mobile society now that students that were in Wisconsin and Michigan and Alabama and wherever, we're always going to be on the same playing field, and that the standards were going to be set high. So setting high standards and having all schools adopt them across the country, I think is a good thing. The other thing it does is it really brings accountability into our schools. Right now we test kids at 6, 8, and 10 to find out how they're doing. This is every year you're going to be expected to hit these high standards. It really brings accountabilities back to schools, and I think that's one of the things our citizens really want out of their schools, is to say, okay, how are we doing here? And we always want to be able to test those and make sure we're advancing. I think it also has potential to really help struggling schools, because now here are some standards. Although you get to learn, you get to adapt how you want to teach to them, but here they are, and you have to bring your students up to them. I think that will really potentially help our struggling schools as well.
Another issue on your campaign website is a major theme is you believe we should have taken the federal money to expand our Medicaid benefits.
Correct.
Why do you think that's so important, sir?
Well, I think, number one, we kicked 70,000 people off of a program where they were getting health care. One of our, again, major responsibilities, I think, of our state government is for the safety, health, and well-being of its citizens. So helping provide health care to those that are in need, I think, is one of our major responsibilities. So I think, yes, we should have taken the Medicaid and tried to expand who we were covering.
Okay.
As well as I think we should have run our own exchange. Because states that have run their own exchanges didn't have the problem signing up that some of our citizens did, and also they're getting better rates. So I think we need to go back and explore that as well.
The American Hospital Association says Wisconsin has the second lowest Medicaid reimbursement rates. Do you think those should be increased, sir?
I think we need to look at that. Medicaid in Wisconsin and in all states is a huge budget issue. And I think what you have to find out, number one, is why are we the second lowest? I don't have the answer to that, but I do have that question. I think that's a grave concern as well. Because again, we want to provide the best medical coverage that we can to our citizens. So why are we the second lowest? Then make a plan on how can we up that to what are reasonable and acceptable levels.
Okay. Transportation funding. The Wisconsin Taxpayers Alliance says if you fund transportation at the 2013 levels for 10 years, the deficit is $2 billion. How should any deficit be made up, sir?
Well, I think transportation is an area that we have to take a real look at. You know, we think of transportation we have to do it 10 years from now the way we do it now. I think we need to look at are there different ways of doing transportation as well. You know, be it mass transit, high-speed trains, whatever. I think we have to look at that so maybe the budget doesn't need to be as we see it now and going to that kind of deficit. The other thing is technology is advancing now. We have cars that run on mainly batteries. So that's hurting a system that's set up to get their money from a gas tax. So we need to look at how are we going to get revenues given technologies is going to continue to advance. And so that's not going to be a viable way of doing your funding. I don't have the answer to that. I do, again, have the questions, and it's an area that we have to start taking a look at and planning for the future, given that the technologies are going to take us someplace different than we are now.
So we should wean ourselves off the gas tax and the $75 license plate fee that you and I pay?
We need to look at that.
Okay. Today, the Legislative Fiscal Bureau came out with a projection that there could be a deficit as we go into the next biennium. If there was a deficit, your thoughts on how to fix it?
Well, there's two ways you fix a deficit. You cut spending or you raise revenues. I mean, that's how you can fix a deficit. Like in any home, our home budgets, even that's what people like to a lot of times say is why don't we run it like we would in our house? Yep. I mean, you first look where you can cut, and then you look at how you can raise revenues. And the revenues doesn't always mean raising taxes. It means you can find revenues by streamlining things, by cutting out redundancies. But what you first have to do, I think, as a state is look at what are your priorities. Education, health, infrastructure, those types of things, and say, okay, that's where we're going to spend our money. I related to a lot of what, when we would interview superintendents of schools, they would talk about the onion theory, where you start peeling away from the outside because you want to keep that core together as long as you can, and those are the things you value. Yes. And that's what I think we need to do with our budget. See it, number one, as a value document. So what are our values? And those we put in that core, and we try to touch last. But obviously, you've got to do a little bit of both of cutting in and trying to recoup some revenues.
There will be another bill to legalize medical marijuana. Colorado and the state of Washington have legalized recreational marijuana. Your thoughts on both those issues, sir?
I think medical marijuana has shown that it has some good results with it, so I have no problem with that as long as it's properly prescribed. I think as far as recreational, I think that's a big jump. I think I would want to, before I would even consider that, and isn't something I would even consider right away, or something that I'm not really in favor of, but other states have gone to it. Is it something you'd want to study down the road? Possibly, but right now I don't think that's an issue for us to look at.
Okay. You may not have studied the issue, but one of the first bills to pass last session changed the mining rules to let Giebig taconite potentially apply for a permit in Ashland and Iron County. If you studied the issue, would you have voted for that bill?
I would have. I can't say I would have or I wouldn't have. I have a problem when we don't. I think we need to study it really closely, and I think there was some study in it. But when we start changing standards that we studied and set for water quality and air quality and those types of things, and we start changing those to favor something coming in, I think there's a, and that's what we need to ask. If our standards that we had already set were reasonable and were what the scientific world says, hey, this is what really makes sense in order for you to preserve your environment, because we only have one environment, and we do need to be careful with that. We're stewards of that. Yep. If what our standards were proven to be what scientifically they should be, then I don't think we should be lowering them to meet what some other company wants to do.
First offense, drunken driving, should it be a crime?
Well, we want to do what we can to discourage drunken driving. I mean, driving and drinking is just not acceptable and shouldn't be. On the other hand, I don't know that we want to fill up our jails and prisons with people who are first offense drunk drivers. I think what we need to do, I think we already have pretty stiff penalties in place for first-time drunk drivers if they cause damage. I think that's a whole different story. If somebody's injured, I mean, that can be a felony, those types of things. We need to get to those people as soon as we can and get them into proper treatment and do assessments that really get at, are they a problem drinker or not. I think the penalties need to be stiff, but I don't want to start giving people criminal records either, because then it makes it tougher to get jobs, rent apartments. I mean, people look at those for all sorts of reasons nowadays, your credit rating, everything. So I think we got to be real careful when we make those types of laws, or what's the long-term effect of that? And what is it we really want to accomplish? What we want to accomplish is get that person off the road, stop them from drinking or driving and drinking again in the future. I think that's where we need to put our effort.
Okay, two more questions. One of them goes back to what you say on your website. You list low-interest student loans as a priority. Can you give me some context for that and what change you're thinking about?
Sure. If we in the state, and one of the things I heard was proposed at one point was maybe running your state bank, and I don't know if we need to go that far, but if we could maybe even be a pioneer in somehow getting student loans back to the interest that a bank pays, so whether it's through the state or we give incentives to banks to do this or whatever, and get people to lower the interest, there is so much money there that could be pumped back into our economy. These students, a lot of them, and this goes back to your transportation issue as well, they don't own cars because they can't afford them because their student loans are so high. They're renting, they're not buying houses. A lot of jobs are affected because of these high student loan rates, and they're paying on them for years and years and years. We have students who are graduating, making $10 an hour because they can't get a job in their field, and they've got, $100,000 of loans out there. Yeah. So if we, and a lot of that is in interest. So if we could get that down to where they could make those payments and pump that money back into the economy, it would create more jobs. They could get the better job that they, studied for. So I think we really need to look at that as a way of helping our economy.
Okay. And then finally, do you want to highlight any differences between you and your opponent on November 4?
I think one of the differences is I'm really going in here because I believe in the people of Wisconsin. I believe that's where we need to invest our money and our effort. He seems to believe we need to do the trickle-down theory, which is proven not to work. We need to grow our economy from the middle out. And he seems to believe that, corporations are and special interest groups are the people that will help lead us out of this. I believe it's the people of Wisconsin that will lead us out of this.
Thank you. Jeff McCabe of Kaukauna is a Democratic candidate in Assembly District 5. Jeff, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you.
Thank you.